Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending the program today. As the program will begin shortly, kindly mute your mic throughout the program. Your cooperation is deeply appreciated. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. All right. Good morning, good morning. So thank you very much for coming. We have 86 people right now. So probably we have some coming in as well from Facebook and YouTube. So our MC, her laptop has some problem right now. So let us just give a round of applause to our guests today. We have our KJ joining us, Mr. Michael, Miss Punita from Bina Initiative and Bina Schedulers. All right. So thank you all of these students who have joined us on the dot. Okay. So allow me to just take this time to appreciate Bina initiatives. Just like to tell you guys what actually happened even before us signing the MOU. So I was the one who got to know Mr. Kumaran and then Mr. Arif, Mr. Bruce, and we are very thankful, UTHM, we are very thankful because Even before signing the MOU, Bina Initiative have been very, very supportive. They were giving us all out. They were training us with the professional competency certificates, and even gave the students very good price, in all these competency certificates. So when I approached them to support us with this event, I was so amazed that they actually sent their entire entourage, their entourage of big shots to grace our event. So we are very honored. Okay, so even today we have one of the big shot from Bina Scheduler. So Bina Initiative and Bina Scheduler, they are like sister company. Okay, so Bina Scheduler, we have our general manager from Bina Scheduler, Mr. Michael, right? And another big shot, Miss Punita. Miss Punita, the Senior Project Control Solution Specialist, right? So if so I will just give some time for MC to just briefly introduce our speakers this morning. Okay, so before I will take the floor again, so please give her some time because the laptop went into problem just now. Okay, so today morning, we also want to thank Miss Punita for joining us because she actually was having MC for the past how many days? And actually the MC has been extended the next few days, but she's still with us. So Miss Punita is doing very good. Okay, so yang lain-lain semua okay tak pagi ni? Yang lain, kalau boleh tunjuk muka. You see all the lecturers' face. I believe the lecturers also miss you. So if possible, you can share your camera, on your camera, show us your face. Let me see. Who do we have today? Okay, we have KV Setapa and the team as well. Welcome, guys. So actually, I would like to say that for the past few days, some of the events brought in by Bina, some were quite deep. The students were saying that, wow, it's very deep, but they say it's very good exposure, the 4D and 5D beam scheduling, right? So I think this afternoon we have Mr. Bruce and Mr. Ng Xianhua also. Okay, they'll be sharing lagi cool high-tech stuff, like VR and stuff like that. So for those who are listening, please remember to stay tuned for today's afternoon session, right? So anyone? Okay, our MC is back, Miss Zafira.
Sorry.
Okay. Back to you.
Can I continue?
Yes, please. You can share the profile of our anything from the start.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. I bid to all of the participants a very warm welcome on behalf of the organizing committee to our distinguished guest speakers this morning, Mr. Michael Tan and Madam Punita Devi Palanikumar. Welcome to the webinar on effective project control during COVID-19 pandemic and lean project scheduling for building projects. Members of the floor, to bless the event, we invite Brother Abdul Muhaimin bin Abu Bakar to lead the Dua recital.
الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Ya Allah ya Karim, Tuhan yang menguasai langit dan bumi, hanya padamu sahaja kami panjangkan kesyukuran atas segala rahmat dan berkat-Mu, atas segala nikmat dan iradat yang telah Engkau tentukan ke atas kami. Ya Allah ya Rahman ya Rahim, sesungguhnya pada hari ini kami berhimpun di dalam program webinar Construction Industry Week bagi menyatakan kesungguhan, komitmen dan iltizam kami dengan roh dan semangat untuk membangun, membina serta mendidik dan memertabatkan anak bangsa supaya berbudi dan berjasa kepada agama, bangsa dan negara. Justru itu, berkatilah pertemuan maya kami ini, berkatilah juga usaha-usaha kami. Ilhamkanlah dalam fikiran dan minda kami idea-idea yang bernas, pandangan-pandangan yang jelas dan keputusan yang waras. Kurniakanlah kepada kami limpahan ilmu yang berguna dan kefahaman yang benar. Satukanlah hati-hati kami, eratkanlah silaturahim di kalangan kami. Padukanlah tenaga dan usaha kami untuk memertabatkan pendidikan bangsa secara bersama demi mencapai kecemerlangan dan kegemilangan. Ya Zal Jalali wal Ikram, jadikanlah kami ya Allah daripada kalangan hamba-hambamu yang taat dan bersyukur. Jadikanlah kami ya Allah daripada menanggari perintahmu. Gunakanlah kami kesihatan yang berpanjangan, kesejahteraan yang sempurna, fikiran yang waras, minda yang cergas, rezeki yang halal, zuriat dan generasi yang beriman, serta kurniakanlah kepada kami segala kebaikan di dunia dan juga di akhirat. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wasallim walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Amin.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Thank you, Brother Muhammad. For your information, today we have two great speakers. Now, please allow me to introduce you to our guest speakers this morning. Our first speaker, Mr. Michael Tan, is the General Manager at Bima Scheduler Malaysia. He draws from his 21st years of planning experience in construction, where he was involved in project team working on complex and challenging projects ranging from iconic buildings such as KL Convention Center to rail transit systems such as MRT. His current role as a general manager at Bima Scheduler sees him leading the team in transforming the approach to project control. Mr. Michael will explain in detail about effective project control during COVID-19 pandemic. Our second speaker, Ms. Punita Devi Palanikumar, is the Senior Project Control Solution Specialist with extensive and management skills. She works for Bina Initiative Sdn Bhd with 14 years of experience working. She has a strong technical expertise and similar function expertise in construction and oil and gas service sectors. She has accomplished track record of most of current planning and scheduling, cost and management, and electronic document management solution for prioritizing, planning, managing, and evaluating projects, program and portfolios of any size, adapt to varying levels of complexity across project, and intelligently scales to meet the needs of all roles, function, or level skills. She has proficient in all phases of product customization cycle involving business requirement study and problem identification, business process mapping with product gap or impact analysis, and customization finalization, change management and implementation, UAT and support. Ms. Punita will explain in detail about lean project scheduling in project building. Without further ado, it's now my pleasure to invite Technologist Dr. Peniel and our moderator for today to our webinar titled Effective Project Control During COVID-19 Pandemic and Lean Project Scheduling for Building Projects. The floor is yours.
Mencari timba si anak dara, di bawah sarang burung tempur. Salam sembah pembuka bicara, selamat datang untuk semua. Bienvenue, Huaning, Varaverpu, Yokoso, Huanyang. Welcome everyone. Okay, so if you realize that we have Satu Malaysia in our midst, we have our beautiful MC, Miss Zafira, we have Mr. Michael, Miss Punita, and I was very hyped up, so I go and learn different language to welcome everyone. Right, so I hope I'm not wrong. Varaverpu, is it correct in Tamil? Varaverpu, maybe my pronunciation wrong, I'm not sure. Okay, so right, so we also want to welcome all the viewers from YouTube, Zoom, okay, FB Live. So like what I was mentioning, if possible, I would really appreciate some of y'all, to open your cam. It is convenient. See, we have Hairul Ikwan there, open also his cam, right? So, I have mentioned that I want to appreciate Bima for their immense commitment to support this event. They have sent I think 8 or 9 speakers, okay, to join us and to support us. So here we have Mr. Michael. He is the General Manager for Bima Schedulers. So, you know, in the midst of this pandemic, I believe that some of us may get a bit frustrated, like, ayo, I cannot go to class, you know, I have to work from home all the time. And because of this pandemic, you and I, we are facing each other through the laptop, correct? So maybe some of you have some questions in your head, like, you know, in the midst of this, right, how, when we fall, how do we get up? Because the whole economy is getting down, you know, we are going to rock bottom. And maybe you ask, how do we get up? Some of us may be facing financial issues as well. But what about the construction industry? So I believe that today, as we invite Mr. Michael to speak, maybe he can answer some question on how to restart and regain productivity and efficiency post-COVID, post-pandemic 19. All right, so if you can, you know, in Zoom, you have the clap button, right? So as we welcome Mr. Michael now, why not we give him a round of applause, right, to welcome him. Thank you, Mr. Michael. Can you find
Thank you.
the
Good
clap
morning.
button?
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, good morning. Okay, please, Mr. Michael, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, doctors. Okay. Thank you for the introduction to meet Punita and me. Today, I'll be speaking about effective project control during the COVID-19 pandemic. All right. 2020 was supposed to be a good year for everyone, but somehow COVID-19 happened. So I think everyone is reeling from the effects of COVID-19. So, and the construction industry in particular, because we are dealing with so much in-person work, we need to be there to do the work. So we are one of the hardest hit industries in the world. So how do we recover? How do we change our daily routine to still continue and still handle the pandemic? All right. My topic today will not be so high-tech as you term it, because this is something that we have been doing for ages. Project control is something that has been going on since the 70s, 80s, and even before that. All right. It's just that we are developing newer and more different methods, more numerical methods to assess our project progress, to assess how the project is going, and also establishing control mechanisms so that we can at least address the issues, detect the issues early, and then respond early. So what is project control? Project control are a series of predefined steps for data gathering, data management, and analytical processes used to predict, understand, and constructively influence the time and cost outcomes of a project or program. This is important, yeah, the time and cost. I think these two words are the cornerstones of the industry. When you come out into the industry, these two are paramount to whatever that we are trying to achieve every single day. All right. So project control is actually a subset of project management where we utilize tools and we utilize our statistical analysis to take a look at all that is happening in numbers, in data, and then choose how to respond to those events happening around us every day. Before we move into project control, let me give you a quick background on the COVID-19. I'm sure there's another speaker who spoke about what COVID-19 has done to the industry. I just give you a refresher. From during MCO, from March to May this year, there was little or no progress in all construction sites around the world. So in Malaysia specifically, we have about 1.7 million. I don't know the real number, but this is the official tally. All right, there may be more. So we need to test the construction workers, and we need to retest them at the prescribed intervals. Okay, and what's happening now, the productivities of construction sites are affected because of all these social distancing measures that we have to implement on site, not just on site, in our daily lives as well. So truthfully, it affects everything that we do now, especially what we have taken for granted on the construction sites. There is physical work, there is interaction, and those things have to be kept at different distances now. All right. So at the same time, the workers, and mostly foreigners, they are also staying in labor quarters, and labor quarters being as they are quite cramped, and then sometimes health conditions are not so ideal. So if any one of them comes down with an infection, it will spread like wildfire. I think we all recall a few weeks ago, or was it a month ago, where there was a construction site in Damansara. They call it the Daman Lela cluster. One of the workers caught it, and it quickly spread. I think it was infections were numbered about 2,000 over infections at the end before they detected it and tried to control it, right? So because of all this, how do we regain our productivity and efficiency that we always taken for granted before COVID-19? These are the current constraints, that we have to face. The authorities have introduced restrictions and constraints in order to safely continue our site activities. So these new measures are expected, I believe, even right now, we can expect to have them another 6 to 12 months until everybody gets the vaccine. Most of the exposure, most of the people that gets exposed very frequently or high risk people get vaccinated, and that will essentially bring everybody to a safer level. So at least we don't have to observe all those measures so strictly, right? But until then, until we get vaccinated, I think within 6 to 12 months later, all these measures will still have to continue. So how do we deal with all this? One, the MKN guidelines ask everyone to adhere to social distancing measures and guidelines. We have to wear PPE on top of the normal safety PPE that we have. Now we have the pandemic PPE, which is face masks, gloves, sanitizers. We also need to observe our habits in terms of distancing with other people, and also our habits in terms of cleanliness, how often we wash our hands, etc. So on top of that, the management of the construction sites will need to monitor the SOP for workers and staff. And we need to implement location tracing for everyone. When you come to office, you check in with MySejahtera. Then after that, you also need to fill in the form if you have been to anywhere outside your district. So those are the standard procedures that we implement in office, in construction sites, I think practically everywhere nowadays. So, and at the same time, the current issues and distancing measures are also disrupting the supply chain. So don't talk about construction sites, you talk about manufacturing factories. Those factories are being impacted by all these measures, and supply of construction material is actually affected, and it will slow down the speed of construction. And basically, the turnaround time for your ordering and your procurement, you will basically need to order earlier because so many other people are fighting for the same material that you want for your construction site. To tackle all these new constraints, we have to change how we monitor and control projects on site. There's nothing else we can do except we have to come to terms with the new distancing measures and the new PPE guidelines. So as how we see it in the industry, there are 5 major challenges for the sites. Right now, the major ones would be we have reduced workers because more often than not, the illegal ones are also contributing to the progress of the construction sites. Although they are not allowed, but I think certain sites still have illegal workers, and due to all these implementation of health procedures and health protocols, they will not be so easily available. They will go into hiding. So because they are afraid they're getting caught. Okay, so basically we just have the registered workers, and of course the registered workers will have to be tested at a regular basis. So based on that, we will have limited number of workers, and we need to start thinking of how to rotate and how to use the limited number of workers. Number two, we have more to do on site, especially for the management, because we have to implement all these new SOPs, and these will incur additional admin costs. And as well as if you have distancing measures in place, you have supply chain disruptions, you will incur additional machinery downtime. Certain times you have to wait for your delivery. So that one, basically your tower cranes, whatever lifting machinery, whatever construction machinery that are involved will basically be idling. So that is another issue. And back to the material issue, we have long procurement times in material, general, normal material that we take for granted. Say, for example, steel bar, bricks, and also the normal cement that's being delivered by trailer. So now we have, earlier on, middle of this year, we had quite a shortage. But I think now it is slowly recovering. We are in a much better position now compared to, say, June, July, August, the third quarter of this year. So the fourth quarter, I think we have recovered somewhat, and we will slowly improve throughout the next half of next year, right? So now, since we have longer procurement time, certain times when we need to accelerate progress on site, as you know, a lot of things happen on site, and sometimes we do need to accelerate. So because of these constraints, we cannot do it even if we wanted to. So we need to plan now, more than ever, we need to plan day by day, month by month, what we're going to do based on what we have as the material. So this will be another challenge for the construction site. And what we have also done on one of our sites is trade worker segregation. So we actually do segregate our workers based on trade because they come in teams, following one kepala, for example, the head of the team. So they will be working very closely together, and we will try our best not to let these group of workers mix with, say, for example, you have a bricklayer group of workers and concrete workers. So we don't let them mix together to reduce cross-contamination. So those are the few things that we do in our efforts to try and limit exposure and cross-infection. And the last one we foresee would be authority inspections. So there was a 3-month stop work generally in the whole world. And I think that there's a lot of backlog of inspections. So I think the authorities will be having trouble to plan their inspections to catch up. So we believe that the backlogs, because of those, we will need more time for final inspections and approvals. So to do all this, to address all these 5 difficulties and new challenges that we have, we need to have a different and have a stable project control system in order to manage and monitor our progress on site. Okay, before we go into a bit more technical items, is everybody following so far? Everything okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So the first thing in project control, let me go through the baseline program. It's basically the basis and your of what you have originally planned in tender. And this is on day 1 when you take the construction site, what you plan to do in order to finish the job within the time frame that you are awarded for. So the baseline program is important because you're supposed to set the reference point of all your scope in the contract, and this includes time, resources, and cost. Most project managers, if given the opportunity, will do it manually or maybe in their heads. But right now, more and more projects are becoming so complicated that it's impossible for you to have it in your head. Basically, we need a work program, we need a list of tasks that is able to remind you and is able to check for you how soon or how fast you can do a group of activities, or maybe just a few single activities that require a long time to do. So by looking at all this in the work program, it will allow you to allocate sufficient time for your project activities. Make sure you are able to finish everything on time. You are supposed to also look at how you're going to allocate your resources in the program. So based on that, you can see, okay, at peak, you will have certain number of workers. Of course, based on this number, you will compare with the market, the availability of workers, whether you can still obtain so many workers. A lot of people will say that baseline programs are theoretical. It is theoretical if you leave it as an academic exercise. At the end, after you finish all your planning and all your resource allocation, you still have to look at the numbers and compare it to reality. This is where experience comes in, and you will be able to say from experience, I've never seen so many workers on site at a single time. It would be a logistical nightmare to coordinate so many workers. And of course, you need to also check whether you can accommodate so many workers in a specific working area, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. So those are the things that you have to, after you plan, you have to relate to reality, and then check whether what you're doing is practical. It would seem to be okay. Yeah, I can finish the job, but I have 2,000 workers. I think there are no construction sites except for the very few who have special approval that has capacity to house 2,000 workers. All right. So based on all this, based on the program that you have done, once you check with the reality, you will be able to use it to monitor your project performance when you start the project. So we move on to the next. How do we do this? How do we develop this baseline program? I think most of you would have studied on this since you are civil engineering. I believe it's in your project management module.
Yeah, but then majority will be, I think, third year. When they are in the third year, then they will learn. So if the juniors are here, not many may have heard of this yet.
Well, if you're the junior, if you are the one of the juniors, just don't think about project scheduling and baseline program as a very difficult thing. It's basically a timetable to do what you need to do. It's just a timetable. Call it a timetable. All right, but this timetable is more high tech. So it has a few other functions and a few other things where you can put in number of resources, your time. It can help you calculate a lot of things as well. It can help you generate your cost curve, your histogram for manpower, etc. So just take it as a very high-tech timetable, nothing more. All right. This comes from me. I've used it for maybe almost 20 years already. So it's just a big and advanced timetable. Okay? Don't shy away because you don't understand it. All right. So how do we establish this baseline program which is a record of what you want to do when you get the job, how you want to finish it? First, we go for the quantities and the productivity table. We basically need to go through a difficult period of extracting the quantities from the drawings and bill of quantities. To plan properly, you must get your numbers right. So there is no shortcut to this. There is no magic to it. You just need to get the quantities out, and you need to establish the productivities for each train. And also from there, you're able to do the sequence of activities, and also based on productivity, you will generate the durations required, how long you need to do a certain trade. The detail that we go to is in square meter. For example, your concrete, the detail that we go through will be in meter square. How long does it take to pour 200 meter square of concrete? So that one generally only happens when you do rough foundation. And for example, how long do you need to erect a brick wall? Maybe 200-300 square meters. That is also based on calculation. You don't, how do we say, you don't pluck from the air. We never pluck from the air in what we do because we are specialized. In general, we also notice that in the industry, some smaller projects will have that tendency to pluck from the air. If the guesswork is called guessing, if the guessing is reliable, it will work. But if it's not, nobody knows. And when you fail, when the project fails, you don't even know why you failed. So that is why we advocate, we don't guess, we advocate real calculation, and you really do need to check your quantities in the project, right? So after you get your quantities, after you get your resources, and you finally have your duration, how long you need to do certain things, you also need to string them together and sequence them together to get the final duration for a project. There are certain things that cannot happen before prerequisite activities. So say, for example, you cannot cast your level 3 before you cast your level 2. So that's just basically logic and physics. So after you get all this, you will be able to estimate your resources. So the resources, when you estimate, you have to assign to each individual activity. So for example, to cast your second floor, it will involve how many sets of formwork, how many construction joints, how many casts. So by each cast, you'll be able to calculate how long you need to do the formwork for each cast, how long you need to do your rebar, and finally your casting. Casting is generally very fast, overnight. It's an overnight operation. So from there, you will get your cycle time. And from there as well, you will also need to assign how many workers will be involved in this particular time. Say 7 days cycle time, you will have maybe six carpenters. If you use system formwork, you will have maybe 8 rebar guys to do the work, and then after that maybe four concreters. So this is an example of how you get your resource, and we do get our resource for every single activity, and we don't guess. I think we don't like to guess because it's an element of uncertainty.
Sorry,
so
Master Michael.
Yes.
Since you say that you do not guess, right? Does it mean that like you have the details of every single resources at your fingertips? Does it mean like you document everything?
There are industry productivity rates. There is a high rate, medium rate, and a low rate. And productivity rates vary according to country and also according to cultural tendencies and national habits, for example. So say, for example, some countries, Friday is a holiday. Some countries, Sunday is a holiday. And also for certain countries, there is a winter that you have to deal with. For us, we have to deal with musim tengkujuh lah, which is the end of the year. So those are the things that you will need to consider, plus your calendars for public holidays. Every single thing is assigned into the program. Then the program must take care of these off days. So you probably have heard of people doing up a work program, and it's just basically a 5 days work program or a 7-day work program. But to us, that 7-day or 5-day is very important. It will require assignment of calendars. We will have to put in all the holidays in a specific state that the project is running. So different states have different off times. So we don't want to end up, we expect to finish certain level of construction during this month, but we use the wrong calendar for the wrong state. So it will run off for a few days. It will run off, we will miss our targets by a few days, up to a week or 2 weeks sometimes. So that will actually create a lot of risks in the project. So we try not to have that happen. If we can handle it at the beginning, if we can handle it on the system, we handle it first. There are a lot of other things that can happen that will screw up the project, so to speak. So we don't want that. We don't want the simple things to get in the way. That's basically what we feel about project scheduling and project planning, right?
Yeah. So which means that during this
so once we
pandemic,
have all these activities, yeah, plus the resource allocations, we also know from the contract we have the BQ. We know each individual item and how much they are. And at the end, we also do need to split the items. For example, there's a concrete. It's quoted as a lump sum for the whole contract. We will need to split the percentage of the slab versus the columns, how much concrete in each element. There's a quick way of estimating this. And then you have to divide by the number of floors in the project. So it sounds very tedious, but it's actually a worthwhile exercise to do because this is what they call as planning. Before you do it on site, you must have a firm base of whatever that you're going to do, how much you're going to take, to how long you're going to take to do it, how much concrete are you ordering, and you shouldn't allow all this guesswork to become the habit of how you do things, basically, or else you won't call that planning.
so that's like lean construction.
Yeah. So we go to the detail of this. If you see this this table, we will list down every single pier in the project and inclusive of how many piles they have. This is I believe this one is from LRT, okay, from the LRT 3 job. So there'll be a number of piles listed for that pier, and you will have the type as well. This is a 1.2 meter pile, 4 piles. So the length and the width and the depth of the pile cap, this is the pier. So therefore, this will be the size, and from there you get your volume, concrete volume. Of course, you have to remove the volume of the rebar, but that's another story. Okay. So of course, sheet pile, you will have to allocate your sheet pile temporary works. So that is also an important thing to consider, because if you don't consider that, the contractor will have to order a lot of sheet piles and it will be everywhere on the site. Normally, good construction practice means that you are able to recycle the sheet pile. After you complete your piles, you will also plan how you're going to recycle the sheet piles. So preferably, it won't be somewhere that is all the way to the end of the other side of the project. So it should be, in terms of distance, you have to plan how you're going to cycle your sheet piles. So those are the things that I myself didn't realize when I first came into construction. It's like there's no magic. Everything you have to consider, and you have to take care of every single thing that's happening on the site in order to optimize the cost and the time. So at the same time, once you have done all these calculations, you'll be able to generate your machinery histogram, and this histogram is generated based on numbers, yeah. So based on quantities, based on duration and numbers. So that's why you have a spread of machinery across the months in the project. Okay. So this is just an example. All right. So next, once we have the baseline, what do? We normally produce our baseline in Primavera because we feel that it's more powerful and it gives us a lot of analytical tools, and the calculation of progress percentage, calculation of weightage is more stable and more, how do we say it, more contractual compared to Microsoft project. I've done an EOT, extension of time application in Microsoft project, and we had trouble comparing the physical progress, because in Microsoft project, the weightage calculation is skewed by delay. If you delay the particular task, that task will become longer and longer in terms of duration. And at the same time, somehow Microsoft assigns more weightage to that activity because it has been delayed, and it takes it's a longer duration, so it's heavier in terms of weightage, which we believe is wrong. All right, so that's why we normally do it in Primavera, because Primavera has a base weightage at the beginning of the project. What are the weightage of the activities like, and it is fixed until you revise the program. So it is in this sense that we prefer Primavera. So if for newbies who have no experience in Primavera, don't worry about that. When you really use it, you will understand. So this is one of the things that I feel when I prefer Primavera over Microsoft Project. No doubt, Microsoft Project is a very easy tool to use. If you are using it for basic planning and basic scheduling to target when you want to finish the job, etc., it's fine. But if you can't use it for detailed monitoring month by month with KPI and with look aheads, it will run off slightly. All right. Okay, back to where we were. We were at the baseline. So once we have the baseline, we will need to do updating and monitoring. We do it via very conventional methods. Basically, in the projects, it will be very useful if you can establish a graphical method that everybody easily understands. For example, this is a viaduct sitting on piers. I believe, yes, this is LRT. So your P10, P11, P12, those are piers. Your P13 so happens in this location is a portal. You have the right pier and the left pier. And it ends up in a portal beam on top that supports probably 2 viaducts because it's a wider thing, and that means it's probably crossing a road or it's approaching a station, right? So for this bottom, sorry. Okay, for this, for the bottom portion of the layout, it deals with elevation, how you see it from the side. From the top, you can see that there's a group of squares with circles. The squares represent tile caps. The circles represent the board piles. The colors also mean something. The colors will mean that yellow is in progress, green is completed, maybe completed and expected, okay? And then white is basically not done, not yet. All right, so everything is numbered, inclusive of the dimensions and the pier numbering. And then, of course, when you look at the bottom row here, you will see that there's a green lines, green rectangles, long rectangles. These are basically the viaduct. When you complete the viaduct, we also highlight it green. So this way, with this format, you can actually distribute it to different levels of the management, different levels of the construction team. From the engineer who updates it all the way to the project director, they will understand what this means. This is not a fixed format per se. Different projects have slightly different ways to represent progress, but the general rule is we need to be intuitive, it needs to be graphical and easy to understand. People don't want a lot of numbers, and by the time you finish reading the numbers, there's no time. All right, it's easy to understand and it's a very useful chart for you to track progress. So with that, once you get your progress updated, you'll be able to use the progress to convert it to reporting. How you do that? We can update our progress on the graphs, and at the same time, everything will get compiled into a performance dashboard. If you can see the background, where you have histograms on top, and then there are lists of issues with the project. You also have the payment status, etc. So this is a one-page, easy to see dashboard that everybody wants to have nowadays in the project, right? So you will have, for example, your S-curve. S-curve, I'll do a quick one on the S-curve. This is, the blue line is actually the late curve. I believe you have learned that. The red line is the blue line is the early curve, the red line is your late curve, and the green line is the actual progress that you have recorded, and you update it in the program, and the program gives you a certain percentage. So you update it every month, and you will be able to see a trend in your S-curve. If you fall between your early and late, you are okay, you are safe. Okay, so with all those items that you have to produce to report to the stakeholders, to the project team, from there, they will use that information to track the progress of the project and also to make decisions. For example, certain issues are happening, certain delays that they don't expect are happening on certain areas. So of course, everybody will need those information to be able to respond. So that's why the project team is there. So at the same time, in recent times, we are doing monthly progress drone videos. Drone videos are becoming increasingly useful because they offer an aerial view of the project site. And if you have a fixed point for your drone, fixed coordinates, XYZ coordinate of your drone, when you fly, you hover at a certain position and you take a picture, that is a very good reference point for you to have your time-lapse photographs, which will also be compiled into a video later at the end of the project, and you can actually see how your project is going month by month. All right. So up to this particular slide that I've explained, everything that you have seen is SOP to us. So means you have to do this whether or not you have COVID. This is what we have been doing for over the years to monitor a project properly. Excuse me. So, but comes this pandemic, how do we handle the pandemic? At the same time, we monitor it. How do we respond to this pandemic? Because of COVID-19, we have to further go one step further to plan in micro terms. We call it micro planning. Basically, we go down to very detailed activities, and we also incorporate the new COVID constraints into our current existing plan. Say, for example, because of the MKN directives, we now need to redistribute our workers. We must control the number of workers in a specific working area. We cannot have so many workers like what we are used to. So, say, for example, if we want to do this, we need to redistribute workers due to the new social distancing measures. Number one, we have to go back to the site plan. We have to determine our zoning first. So the zoning, of course, will be redistributed in the layout according to how much area we consider is safe. So that decision will have to be made together with the project team and also with the guidelines of MOH. So if, for example, we used to have 2 zones or 3 zones, now it will probably be 5 zones to be able to monitor it more closely with the social distancing measures. So with these extra zones, we will be separating the workers into separate small areas, and we have to really control where they are working. So there will be a safe passage for their egress and ingress in and out of the site. And then at the same time, each workers will be localized in their specific zones. They are not encouraged to mingle. And if they do, they will have to put on record. So this is what I said as earlier as an additional administrative cost to the contractor. So the main contractor have to administer and manage all these new measures to be able to ensure that their site is relatively safe from possibility of infection. Okay. Then the next issue we have to deal with would be how to segregate the workers outside of the construction site. Now we have right now we simulate how the workers are segregated on the site by having more zones, etc. And because of that, you also have reduced productivity. But at the same time, you will also have to manage their segregation when they leave the site. That means when they go back to their labor quarters, their gongsi. All right, so that will be another thing that you need to do. And of course, all these work sequence and durations that you have will, in the baseline, will have to be changed and adjusted due to all these distancing measures. So from this new plan, you will have to recreate a new revised program. And this new revised program must also take into consideration how many workers you can get, how many workers that can be maintained on the site at a certain time. And at the same time, don't forget your material supply constraints. Yeah, So your suppliers will have to be, you have to update from your suppliers, and you have to get how much the material you can receive, the rate of materials to your site. So all these things must be assessed due to this COVID pandemic. You have to replan everything in your project site and reassess all this. So when you do this, you will also have to consider whether you need to perform mitigation, which means your supplier, say for example, number one, your supplier cannot give you enough steel bar supply. You will have to naturally go source for a new supplier. You have to get a new supplier, check the price, at the same time check their capacity. So those are the things that you need to do in addition to your previous plan. Maybe in your previous plan, you will have one supplier and that's enough for the whole project. But now due to this, you could need probably 2 or 3 suppliers to still maintain your supply rate to the construction site. So we can do all this, but at the same time, we may not recover the 3 months that we lost due to the initial MCO. So in this sense, most contractors are busy replanning their site, establishing new targets, and at the same time applying for EOT for the lost time in the initial few months of the pandemic, which is the MCO. So with this planning process that we go through, we will be able to get greater accuracy in our estimates and in our project planning for the site targets, and the project team will also get increased visibility of what they are supposed to do every day, every week, every month. They will have targets that will be distributed down from the project director all the way down to the project managers to the section heads. So with this, I think everybody can share the planning document to be able to manage the site with a single plan. So that everybody wants to do it their own way, but to achieve this plan, bear in mind that you have to also sit down with the project team to come up with a decision together. This is how we're going to run it. So when you have that decision, have that plan, that's where everybody have to move according to plan. All right. And then with this, everybody can also see the updates of what they've done, whether they have progressed in the correct way or not. So from all that I've examples that I've given, we also have a digital tool to make it easy for you to update what you're doing on site. It is basically on a mobile app, so that you can key in your resources, you can key in your activities and manpower on the site, and also attach site photographs. You also have a web interface where the planner or the administrator in the office can actually get the data that is uploaded to the cloud. So at the end, the data gets compiled into a site diary, a hard copy site diary that can be the official document for the site, the daily record of the site, so to speak. So a good project control system allows us to systematically address all the numerous constraints on site so that we can plan better, we can execute our job better. So, this will also reduce surprises now. Now more than ever with this pandemic, we have to plan properly so that we don't get bogged down by all the new constraints that are being introduced. You can say all you want, but the projects still have to be completed on time. Maybe you get an extra 3 months EOT for the MCO, but after that, everybody have to perform according to the contractual time frame. So there is no excuse. So with this, we also need to take it seriously that we have to replan our initial baseline to be able to still hit those targets.
Mr. Michael.
Yes.
Mr. Michael, which means that after the 3 months of EOT, there is no possibility of extension anymore?
Unless you can prove that the extension is not of your doing. Take for example, the Damansara cluster. That happened in Pavilion Damansara. I believe the authorities found that contractor was responsible for not having a good enough environment. So I don't think the government or the client, the owner, pavilion, I don't think they're going to take responsibility for giving you extra time. They're going to pay their financing. They are also financing the job, and they have to pay interest. And the not going to pay for the financing for you as well. So this one is happening because of the relation of time. Time is the essence. So when you have something that occurs, when there's a risk that happens, and you cannot prove that it's not your fault, it is not inclement weather or not something that you unforeseen.
Yeah.
Basically, I think somebody have to bear the brunt of the impact, basically. So if you get into delay, you will be charged LAB. Basically.
Yeah, that is a great loss, man.
Yeah, I think unless there's an agreement between the three parties, the banker, the client, and the contractor, but it needs to be a lot of talk. It's not so simple.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So let me move on to my next slide. Okay, I think this one is just a very standard thing that everybody knows. Project control, if you do it properly, you have better transparency and communication. So we have the mobile app, which is able to help in this. And I think help in our human habit. What we always like to do, we postpone what we're supposed to do. So with the app there, you just key in when you're on site. And you can see the workers in front of you, you just key in the information. So it's very convenient and prevents all this lost information when you by the time you get back to site office, the project office, then you might have forgotten if you don't write it down. So the second one that you will get to do better will be to manage time, cost, and quality better. So if you are not in a rush, your cost you can actually control. The quality also can be controlled. Okay. Then, of course, risk management. You'll be able to use this updated data to estimate and predict, anticipate risks. So there will be certain trends that you will see when you update your program, that you will see that your site is slowing down. Then you can drill down to which particular trade is slowing down. Then, of course, you will also need to drill down for that particular trade. What is the reason? Is it formal? Is it rebar supply? Is it worker supply? So those are the things that you can do when you look at the data. So we can actually anticipate and address the risks that happen. Of course, contract and legal matters, as you mentioned just now, Doctor. This is something that is always in the background. You cannot escape from your contractual obligations unless the two parties agree. All right. So with this, if you have a good monitoring, you'll be able to make sure that if there's an event or something happens that is due to the client, for example, they change the design. So you record it and you track it properly. And later on, with the program, you can apply for an EOT that you can substantiate. So also, because of this, we do not advocate guessing, because at the end, when you want to apply for EOT, it will be also guessing. And the person who assesses your EOT will also be asking you why certain things are done this way. So you need to be able to answer to all those things. Okay, one of the last slides, conceptual, design, development, construction, and completion. Have you all gone through this in your course? Any module with this? This is a typical project life cycle.
Yeah, I think generally they will know the phases.
Yeah, so it's okay. I will skip this. Okay, so basically this is what we do on a daily basis. We do it for building projects, infrastructure projects, and oil and gas projects. there's one more category called we call it under utilities, which is basically your power stations, your dams. Those are very rare, of course. So this is what we do on a daily basis. This is what we drink, eat, and sleep every day. So I hope that what I've shared is gives you a better idea into what you are going to face when you come out into the industry. So I open the floor for questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Michael, for a very detailed sharing. I think project management indeed is to us, I think is very challenging because you need to be doing things from the big picture and all to the micromanaging. So I think maybe some of us who are listening, I think it could be quite new, or it's like very far for us because some of us we have yet to enter the industry, the literally on the site. So certain things are hard to be imagined. So I think it is still a very good exposure. Okay, so because of time constraint, maybe we can only have one or two questions, right? So Miss Tasha Hui, she asked, Sir, would you say that the construction industry is no longer a lucrative one, especially during the pandemic? What advice would you give to students who are in pre-final or final year who are interested in serving in the construction industry?
Lucrative. What do you mean by lucrative? Okay. Let's get things straight. When I came out 20 years ago, 1999.
Wow.
The first company I joined was a contractor, and I still believe that to be able to know what you are doing, you must join the doer. You must join the company that does the work. You must join the contractor. Yes, it's a bit difficult. Yes, there will be long weekends, but there's no better way to learn what you are going to do for the rest of your life. If you do indeed plan to be in the construction line, be it a designer or you want to go higher up the food chain, developer, of course the lowest in the food chain is basically the contractors and the subcontractors. But being lowest in the food chain, you will be able to know the nitty-gritty stuff that defines what you are able to understand about construction, how you're able to manage things that come up. Say, for example, if you know construction, if you know how to do it, you'll be able to manage next time. If you end up in a developer or a consultant, you will know exactly what's happening on site. So I truly believe that somehow we need to plan to have a part of our careers working with contractors, at least for a few years, to be able to understand what's happening on the construction site. And when you say lucrative, I think I'm forming an idea of what you say, what you mean. Whether you like it or not, construction will still go on. Developers want to build buildings to sell so that they can earn money from that. So whether you like it or not, construction will still go on. We will still need hospitals. We will still need infrastructure. So maybe if you term construction industry as not so lucrative, because there is a new industry that's coming up, which is the computing and AI industry, which I believe will be very useful for the construction industry. So every industry needs AI. So I believe there will be a niche for that in the construction industry. And this is something, the industry is something like medicine or the food industry. It will never go away. It will always be there.
Right. I actually do see many questions popping up, and some are very interesting questions. But because I'm not sure, because I think Miss Punita is she needs quite a lot of time to go through the slides as well. So maybe, I'm not sure, Mr. Michael, are you able to stay through? So if we have some time at the end, we can address these questions again. Is it possible? Or do you need to leave earlier?
I suppose I need to manage some issues. Let me come back at about 12 when Punita is expected to finish. Then you guys can start
Alright.
your questions. I don't mind.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, see you later.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Michael, once again. I think if it's possible, we would like to hear more of his experience. Okay, so but I think we are also very excited right now to learn in detail, what it is about lean scheduling. I think it's pretty new to us. So if you are listening, can you just type in the chat box what is the first thing that crosses your mind when you hear of lean? The word lean, not lean scheduling, lean. So let's see what goes through your mind. When I was first exposed to lean, I also feel that, why do they use such a word in construction? Okay, actually it's not construction, it's a general term for even the manufacturing world.